Welcome, everybody. I'm Mike Freedman, co-founder and CTO at 𝗥𝗲𝗃, the creators of TimescaleDB, and I'm thrilled to be hosting this fireside chat today. We have a fantastic opportunity to delve into the innovative work being done at BioT Medical. With us today is Guy Vinograd, the co-founder and CTO at BioT Medical. Guy, could you briefly introduce your company and the role you play in the healthcare landscape?
The role that we play is providing a cloud component for medical device companies or health tech companies, where that kind of component is quite challenging to develop because of challenges around protecting patient data in the cloud. It's so big that the business case for doing it was relevant for only very few devices, like with big market like pacemakers or glucose monitors. For the rest, it was too hard to do till we came along. Our purpose is to democratize cloud for health tech, medtech.
Could you share more about the age of your company, how long you've been around, size, etc., more stats kind of?
As a platform company since 2020, we founded ourselves during COVID, where all remote care came as a strong requirement, and cloud was paramount, and those challenges I mentioned became big barriers. It's a pivot from a different previous company. We started already in 2012, where we did all sorts of IT devices, and starting 10 years ago, roughly, came the first medical devices that needed remote patient monitoring, and that required a cloud component.
And can you say more about who these customers are and why they adopt your platform? What jobs to be done do you do for them?
Actually, they come from virtually any kind of clinical domain. This could be devices or applications around cardiovascular care, oncology, diabetes, orthopedics, neurology, whatnot. Just to give you a few examples, one is 𝗙𝗵𝗽𝗀, a company called 𝗥𝗲𝗃. It's a therapeutic device for home use for those who suffer from migraine. You wear it on your arm, and it electrocutes your arm so hard so you forget that you have a headache. During that, they also asked many questions about symptoms you're facing, like light sensitivity, sound, audio sensitivity, and they collected so much data in the first years they were on the platform that they even started predicting when a patient will have a migraine, and last year got an FDA approval for that, so now they can tell you, put the device to prevent the migraine that will happen to you in a few hours. This is just one example of how cloud is so impactful.
What makes BioT Medical's journey particularly compelling for us is your use within the context of a regulated industry, one that stores sensitive patient health records. I know in the US that is covered under HIPAA regulation, and 𝗥𝗲𝗃 launched support last year for HIPAA compliance. We're kind of eager to explore how you're leveraging medical and sensor data to drive these advancements. But let's go back a bit first. I think you've been working with IoT data, particularly in healthcare and medical contexts, for more than 10 years. Reflecting on this journey, I'm curious how the industry has changed over that time. Its needs, its requirements, its technologies.
I would say that it started with home use devices, the first ones that went to market. Sometimes it was like twice that failed, but still they pointed the direction. And essentially at the beginning, the regulation was so vague about that. You could submit that kind of devices and you would get a lot of questions. The auditors would not know what to do. Sometimes they would approve, sometimes not. There were no guidelines at all. And that has changed year over year. I think starting 2018 or 2017, every year came new standards, new guidelines. On one hand, everybody complained it's becoming harder and harder to deliver those cloud-based products. But on the other hand, it became more clear what you have to do in order to provide this product in a safe way, in a secure way. There were a few bad incidents happening with medical devices in hospital networks that were hacked and with severe impact, and also big home use devices like pacemakers and diabetes that were hacked, and that, let's say, awakened the FDA and other bodies to start regulate.
I'm kind of curious, what are some of the overall challenging, are they security or other things that these device companies face when they're trying to build and manage their own infrastructure? My understanding, as you frame, BioT yourself aren't developing the devices to be used by patients. You're serving those companies who themselves are developing these type of devices.
Right. We provide this platform that serves their infrastructure, software infrastructure, and becomes the cloud part of their solution. And the challenge here is so big because when you're dealing with patient data, especially on the cloud, there is big risk because, if your medical device is breached, it's just one patient that's exposed. But when your cloud is breached, it's hundreds of thousands of patients that are exposed. That's why you have to comply with so many regulations. It's the cybersecurity guidance of the FDA. It's HIPAA, which is, a law in the United States. It's also for care providers, they don't trust your HIPAA declaration because everybody can declare it's HIPAA, and some companies declared it while not meeting what they need to do. So care providers now require certifications, external auditors providing SOC 2 Type 2 certificate with the HIPAA coverage inside, and some even request HITRUST, which is a specific one for healthcare. And there's also internationally ISO 27, a lot of software bill, penetration tests, vulnerability scans, software bill of materials, scanning in your CI/CD, lots of stuff, lots of work, and lots of barriers for the meta companies, their core expertise is actually the sensors, the algorithms, not all that overhead that is no differentiator at all.
You mentioned healthcare data a couple times. Maybe you can go a little deeper. What type of healthcare data do you typically store? And what are the challenges specifically around these types of data?
We store everything, meaning it's identified data. It's both the identity of the patient and the measurement takes. Where hospitals have EHRs, electronic health record software, to store that thing for them, med companies and health companies don't have anything. They have to build it on their own, and that's why we built BioT. Just to give you an example, let's take PHI, Protected Health Information. Say you store in your cloud the patient record with their date of birth. The patient's doctor might be allowed to see it, but your technician servicing the system may not, and your data scientist may see it, but only as a year of birth, the age of the patient. So this is code someone has to develop for that. Another is patient consent. It's not just, okay, I allow you to store my data or not. It goes to granular level. For example, we had requirements where a patient coming to an orthopedic surgery can select in their consent what they want to expose. Maybe they have an alcoholism history. What is that related to the orthopedic surgery? They can say, I don't want them to know that I was an alcoholic. So someone has to develop the code to do all those masking or access control of the data, and that thing that, any small mistake in that may end up in a significant risk for the medical device company.
I think the reference, you were talking about EHR, which I think are electronic health records, and this is like well-known companies like Epic, if I'm not mistaken. So these are systems that are pre-built for hospitals, but I guess the equivalent is you're the platform that's doing for medical device companies. Is that fair?
Yeah, exactly. And we'd like to think that we are more accurately built than what they build for hospitals.
And so I'd like to understand your, turning the focus a little bit to your journey with a database like Tiger Data and Tiger Cloud. I'd love to better understand your platform journey. Before you adopted Tiger Cloud, what other things did you consider instead?
Okay, so most of BioT primarily on AWS. Its approach is cloud agnostic, but most of the deployments is on AWS. So naturally, first thing we chose to build on was on TimeStream. AWS TimeStream was out, was HIPAA eligible, HIPAA compliant. Sometimes the healthcare industry is a bit behind in terms of technology. Maybe some say it's even a decade behind because of those regulations. Not all the technologies out there are HIPAA compliant, and we cannot use something that is not. At the time, AWS was there, and it fitted for a while. And then as data models came more complex, I didn't tell you about how we support all those kinds of devices. Maybe we'll talk about that later. When these came complex, started seeing queries that we expected to take 100 milliseconds tops, and they took with TimeStream like 4 or 5 seconds, sometimes even more timeout. We realized that TimeStream is probably architected inside as like a thin layer of file appenders. The write is very fast, but then those queries do not scale. Not truly optimized, I would say, for queries over time series data. We looked at Timescale. We also checked first the performance. Of course, read your wonderful blogs, and then independently verified the performance. Let's say that you're in our horizon for quite some time, and when you started communicating with us that HIPAA compliance is on your roadmap, then it became very interesting for us, and immediately when you announced it, we were there.
It's rare that one feature unlocks, but totally understand in the context of certain regulated industries how that's the case. What about Timescale or Tiger Cloud led to satisfy the needs of data storage and analytics that you had?
Of course, the ability to do statistical queries over time series. We support all sorts of medical devices. Some stream waveforms, some stream biomarker spot checks, some other kinds of records data, Many of them look at trends, both, by the way, clinical trends, like, if the patient is deteriorating or not, the rate of them taking the treatment, for example, but also technical ones, failure rates of devices, etc. All those, this ability to query with the sense of time at scale is something that is very in use in BioT.
My understanding is that you serve all these customers in the healthcare space, but the use cases vary a little bit between them. So my guess is you probably don't have one out-of-the-box configuration that works for everybody. How do you manage different needs, and how did that map to how you use Tiger data differently?
As mentioned, they each send totally different data. That an EEG scanner sends is totally different than blood diagnostics microscope, for example. So what is central to our platform is what we call the data governance layer. Then there it includes a no-code data modeling system. It's like what you have in a typical CRM, where any semi-technical user can define those objects, where in CRM it's customer, company, all of those. In BioT, we come out of the box with patient, caregiver, device, care organization, and also you can define any kind of those objects. Within those objects, you can define any kind of field that you like, all sorts of data types, virtually anything. And to those classics, I would say, we had some healthcare regulatory features. So one is that for every kind of field, you can mark it as with a checkbox that this is a protected health information field, meaning that only the doctor can see it as is, others would see it in a different way. So our access control system immediately and automatically takes care of that. Secondly is the user access permission. In a healthcare platform, it should be on the attribute level, on the field level. You cannot rely on the standard role-based access control in healthcare because of those things. This is an attribute that doctor can see, the other cannot. So with role-based, if you try to do that, you end up with thousands of roles and you lose control of your system. So we are applying attribute-based access control, and that keeps the rules to just a few dozens, which is manageable. So after we have this no-code model in the system, now in the context of Timescale, we dynamically generate the relevant SQL schema. So in the end of the day, if you look at the database, you'll see tables as if you wrote specific SQL to that specific model of the medical device company. Not, fields like text 1, text 2, integer 1, integer 2, but the real things.
And I believe in this context, each of your customers can have their own schema because it's auto-generated from this low-code builder. I understand that you also run kind of customers isolated. So you actually spinning up their own infrastructure and services on a per customer basis because you want that level of isolation from a security perspective. Is that not the case?
Yeah, exactly. We are architected for security, and one safety rule, one of the most important one, is that we keep the data segregated. Meaning each customer gets their own dedicated cloud account with a dedicated deployment, and dedicated database is part of that. And it ensures that no way that the patient data originating from one company would permeate to another customer. Of course, each of them get a dedicated instance of Tiger data.
And I certainly imagine that also having a cloud infrastructure that makes it easy to spin things up and down assists that journey. Now that you've been using Tiger Cloud for some time, first of all, what features have you found particularly useful?
So in addition to the way we can query for statistical insights, also anything related to import-export of data, we've got some tools there that allowed us to migrate very quickly, and that was a blessing because some of our customers already accumulated significant amount of data in TimeStream.
What tangible benefits have you been observed? This could be in terms of performance, scalability, cost effectiveness. I'm kind of curious about the before and after.
I think we should revisit that in a year or two because you became HIPAA-compliant relatively recently. So while we worked with you before as beta, the real scale, the real things are in production. So bear with us to really answer that question.
Well, I hope we solved your 5-second query problem at least.
That for sure. I'm talking about
Sure.
taking it much more than what we did with TimeStream.
And maybe to close up before questions, I'd love to up-level the conversation a bit. Perhaps the biggest technological change of this decade is use of AI. I'm curious to know if you've started seeing this impact your industry at all.
First, for sure, for many years, medtech companies, health companies are building AI algorithms and making the device actually thinner and thinner. The vision, I think, of the entire industry that the medical device itself would be only sensors and actuators sending all the raw data to the cloud, and all of that is processed with AI over there. Not always is the case that you can do it, because what happens if the cloud is now down, the communication down, you still have to have some processing on site, but in many cases, like diagnostics cases for sure, you can do it offline on the cloud. So AI is being used for a long time. Generative AI is, of course, newer. I can tell you that we're also making strides there with building custom web applications, for example, with prompts, but in a regulated way. Today, 𝗥𝗲𝗶𝗃 and all those tools are very nice, but they cannot be used in a regulated environment, and something on our own roadmap.
What does it mean to have these AI prompts and whatever in a regulated manner?
Well, it really depends on what you want to do with them. I'm not talking about developing a clinical algorithm in the backend that provide actions or insights. No. I'm talking about building those front ends for mobile applications for patients, web portals that just show data, and if they access a regulated secure backend like BioT, then you have a complete system with prompts, and it will be regulated. So that's one interesting thing.
Makes sense. Now I thought we'd open up the floor if we had a question or two. I think this is a great opportunity to delve into specific area of interests. Let's see what the questions are. What other tools does BioT use with Tiger Cloud? Are there any parts of your stack that you want to share that has been particularly useful in building it?
Well, of course, many AWS services, all the classics ones, the queues, the storage S3, etc. Also, we use for messaging Twilio, for example. I would say, pretty much expected stack, assuming it is HIPAA compliant, of course.
Next question, I think these are all engineering wise. Do you keep separate device data tables per customer to ensure that the query performance is optimal, or have you not found that to be necessary?
As I mentioned, even more than that, per customer, we have a dedicated cloud account, dedicated deployment, where it was not for performance, it was for security and regulatory reasons. There are so many things you need to do: disaster recovery, scalability, observability, all of those things, and we do it separately, but with a lot of DevOps automation to make it scalable.
So in that question, the customer is another medical device company, healthcare company. Within the context of one service, maybe they could be also asking, the data for multiple patients is together in the same table. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's not a table per patient, of course. It's the same one, and the data governance layer is the one that ensures that the access to that table, to specific records to that table, to specific fields, cells, there is done according to the access control rights per user, per attribute.
Is there anything you could share about how much, the size or scope of your deployment on Tiger Cloud? Anything that you feel comfortable sharing?
I would say a few dozens of deployments.
Of separate deployments, yeah.
Yeah.
Perhaps last question. Were there any surprise benefits that BioT Medical experienced with Tiger Cloud after the migration?
You have great support, I would say. You're very responsive. That's not the case with other vendors we work with, just to say without naming.
Great to hear.
I also see the base of features that you bring in. I have now a blackout. It was something that we needed, and we talked with you about it, and like in a week or so it happened. So that was very nice.
That's always good to hear. I certainly don't want to promise always that.
I'm sure we didn't make you do it. We just happened to be in the right time.
Thank you again to Guy Vinograd for sharing your valuable experiences and insights. We at Tiger Data are super proud to partner with organizations. We like to say that we're kind of helping to build the future of technology. And I think the key word is helping, because, many cases we serve other software companies like yours who are doing really amazing things. In this case, what could be more important than medical devices making people healthier? So that's really great to see through the use of data. For everybody else, we hope this session has been informative and a little inspiring, and look to see you all in a future webinar. Thank you very much.